yet, but I bought Kimberly Fletcher's Women, America's Last Best Hope. I think, Katie, you said The Light and the Glory you want to do. So if you want to do like The Hiding Place, I picked up my son from the Netherlands, and I read The Hiding Place on the plane over, and then the next morning we went to her house and saw the cathedral where Hitler walked by, where Beethoven played, and then went into the house and the closet, and it was so real to be there. And she, it cost her dad and her sister their life, but they anchored hope in Jesus through the Bible, and they shared their pieces of their Bible. You can follow Corrie ten Boom and Her Faith on Facebook, and just get their little vignettes. I want to start putting them on ours, because they were women of faith. And that's how you get through difficult things. And we're going to have difficult things. Anyway, so they're just beautiful things. Okay, so Ellen Jolene spoke at the 20th anniversary in Dallas of Moms for America. It started off as Homemakers of America, then became Moms for America.
Mm-hmm. I just have 3 comments. Are we allowed to make comments?
Yeah.
Okay, and it starts from when I came in, but you were talking about a voice, like having a voice.
Yes.
Like the different things, there was like 8 groups or whatever. My 15-year-old just had a mental breakdown at the end of the school year last year, and she was hospitalized. We had to take her to the hospital, and I was told by the people that work there, they had to interview myself alone, my husband alone, and my daughter alone. And I was told...
That's DCFS, and they can take your child.
I was told that if we did not put her in a facility for 5 days, that they would take my daughter. They could come and take my daughter, and he said to me,
you have to be so careful right now in Utah.
You take them into the hospital.
This is
with the
Utah.
petition. Yeah.
This is Utah.
Yes.
You have parental rights.
Yes, you do. It's in our Constitution.
Just a second. Mm-hmm. That we have the last say.
Mm-hmm.
So if you say, because I said to him, why can't I just take my daughter home? Mm-hmm. She's stabilized, things are fine. We'll find her a psychiatrist and we'll move forward from there. He knew there was no abuse in the home. All these things were ruled out, right?
Yeah.
It was an issue with my daughter and her mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, but because we have a psychologist on staff, they can say that we will remove your child from your home. So even
at the
though
school?
You're the parent,
at the school?
No, this is in the hospital.
In the hospital.
This is at primary
But they're
children.
putting psychiatrists in the school, so they're trying to do that at the school level. So be aware. Okay.
So this was at primary children's.
Okay.
This whole thing happened, right?
Yeah.
So when you said that, like I get that, your voice,
yes.
like we have got to have a voice. I didn't know I've raised 7 children.
Yes.
I've never been in that position before.
Yeah.
I've never been faced with that before.
So you used it and you said no.
No, I did not say no. And now we owe $75,000 for a 5-day stay for all of her, and she came back worse. So since I found a psychiatrist and a therapist that we love, they are both LDS, they go to the temple, one is in the Stake Relief Society presidency, we trust, we share information. I love these women love me. And they both said, when this happens, the children come back worse. We have to work to detox what happened to them, not just physically, but emotionally when they were pulled out of their homes and put in these places with very strange people, very strange.
5 days away from mama.
It's a money racket.
Yeah, it's a money racket, and they don't care.
It is. Even the adults in there gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
I'm turning my child over to people that I wouldn't even buy food from or interact with on a daily basis, right?
No.
Yes, so Utah.
No, I was threatened.
No, they threaten, but they're threatening. They do that even for vaccines. So, like when I put my daughter in kindergarten, I didn't vaccinate, and this mom in front of me, they said, "We can't give you your child's teacher's name until you vaccinate. We saw that you didn't vaccinate, and so they're lying to you because we have all 3 vaccine exemptions. And same with Utah's own little constitution, not our national constitution, but our national constitution protects families. It was written to do that. But our Utah Constitution, we're the only one that included parental rights in our Utah Constitution. So you can just say, no thank you, I'm the mom, goodbye. So I had the same with, I gave birth to my daughter in the hospital, and I was trying to do a home birth. And my husband jokingly said that I had come in without a doctor. I had already had my 4th child accidentally at home. I had already did home births with midwives, but I had one without a midwife accidentally with my 4th son, and then when we got here it was so much more expensive. The economy crashed, and I didn't think I could afford $3,000 for a midwife, and I tried to deliver at home after 3 days. My body wasn't functioning. I was almost 40. It wasn't functioning. So I went and had a C-section. But when I came in, they asked him, they're like, "Are you a polygamist?" And he jokingly said, "Yes, she's my third wife." And they called DCFS on me. And they came into my hospital room. But because I already was a homeschooler in California and understood that my rights, when he came in, someone would come in and give me the sacrament on Sunday, and then the DCFS guy comes in and he starts questioning me, and he's like, "I'm from this," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I know my rights. I don't have to answer this, and you're in my room. Please leave." You know, I'm a mom of 5 kids, and please leave. And then he came to my house. I had to. You have to educate your children. You can never allow them in your home, ever. You have rights. Once you allow them in your home, or you allow them to take your child, you lose your rights. So you have to say no. So I had sat my kids down, my oldest was 12, and I said, if I'm not home, and I ran to the store or something, and someone knocks on the door, do not answer the door. You do not let anyone in our home. And I was out weeding on the side of my house, and they came and knocked on the door. I could not get up fast enough and I saw that it was the same guy. And he had knocked on the door. My kid didn't answer the door. And then I had to tell him again, I will call the police if you come back again. You leave. I know my rights.
So
you leave.
what would have been her option? Because was it just, no, you can't interview
Yeah, you
my
say,
daughter
I'm
alone?
sorry, but this is my child. I know my rights.
I need to be in the room?
I said, "This is
Yeah.
my child." I did
Yeah.
not say I know my rights, because
Yeah.
I didn't know
Yeah.
my rights.
Yeah.
But I said, we would like to take her from the hospital, now that she's stabilized, find a psychiatrist and move forward from there.
Where she-
And he said,
Yeah.
"You can do that,
Yeah.
but we also have so-and-so or such and such
And he threatens it.
on
Yeah.
call right now, and they can come and remove your child from your home, and then you have a whole nother slew of issues and problems if you do it that way."
So what she did wrong in the first place. So what she did
I
wrong.
seriously want to not pay her. My
Yeah,
husband
get a
and I-
lawyer. And
I'm
you know
so
what?
mad about
Frank
it.
Myler would
I'm
help you
like,
with that.
I'm gonna have to go get a job to help pay for
No,
this.
Frank Myler would
and
help
I'm
you with
angry.
that. And also there's Monster America has access. If there's on our website, we have a training about lawyers and rights like that. And we have a lot of lawyers that will take cases like that for free. So where she did wrong is she should not have let them ever. So when she went to the hospital and she let them separate you, that's when you gave up your rights. That's why they can come after you.
So don't.
You never
One of
do
us
that.
was in the hospital room with her at all times. Either
What?
my husband or I, we stayed there.
And
She
they
was
didn't
there
make
for
you.
3
They didn't
days.
make you. No. But when you first went in, they separated you at first, right? That's what I heard. They separated
No,
for just a
this-
minute.
This was at the end of her stay.
Okay.
When she was about to be released.
Okay.
They interviewed the 3 of us.
So
separately.
even in a hospital, you can never try not to ever be separated. So like my son's basketball coach from Real Salt Lake, that was the BYU basketball coach. He's now going to help coach UVU basketball. His son had injured himself, but they didn't think it was a break. So like for 2 weeks, they didn't do, they just did their home stuff. And then they went in and said it was broken, and the doctor called DCFS on them. They came in, they didn't know their rights. They separated mom over here, dad over here, other kids over here, and then they were in a legal battle to get their kids back. Because they said abuse. Well, my son at Real Salt Lake Academy, I had worn my little lanyard that I told you about, that Chris Kimball had educated me on Healthy American, and I got my lanyard to using religious liberty. So no, you can't. I have these lanyards. If this happens again, I will make another 500 of them. And they are religious liberty. That's what you're going to use, to not be masked, not be locked down, not to be forced to do anything.
But Kristen Chevrier
Do not do the vaccine portal, because at the end when you click on you agree, they can take your child away, because they say that you're putting your child at risk. So I will not do the portal. I won't click on it. And then I go to the school and I say, put this in my kid's folder. And like, and I'm like, put it in the folder. They will not be vaccinated. Same with my private school, that somehow it's connected. And now, the health department in Utah had to have my letter. But so my son, I had told my son, I raised my kids that never talk to the principal or the school counselor. They're not counselors anymore. They're proudly, you can look online. Recently, Dixie High School proudly wrote that they are social justice warriors. That's what Obama's plan was with Common Core, bringing Common Core in. That's one of the goals, is to bring in these. How they're going to take away your Second Amendment rights is by surveys. You opt your children, your grandchildren, tell your daughters, your sons, opt them out of surveys. And if they said that they're depressed or suicidal, then they say that you cannot apply for a gun. They will take our guns away through
You know what they're
surveys in
doing now
schools.
too, is
Yes.
they are using the testing systems on all of the
Yes.
tests in public schools.
Yes, so never
To-
test
to
if you're in public
survey
school.
If you have guns in the home.
Yes, and the
where you
doctors
have-
too.
What your
Yeah.
parents do, there's a lot of.
So when you
really
fill out
valid
things,
questions.
like I wouldn't fill out when I had my kid at the Timberline up here, it wouldn't let me register him unless I gave my doctor's number and phone numbers, and I'm like, that's my data. Our Declaration of Independence says my personal private things are mine. That's my child, my data, my papers. And no, so I went to the school and said, I can't register my kid online because I will not share that data. So I'm like, I'm here to register, but I will not. You just have to know your rights. That's why we have to get it out there.
I have two more things, totally different.
Oh, can we talk
related.
about that after though? Let's talk about it after because we've got to. I'm not going to get anything
Very
done.
good.
Yeah. So let's because I only have 11 o'clock. Yeah. So, okay. So our greatest work works within the four walls of our home, and this is what Robin was trying to explain at the beginning of class. That 10 small discussion groups in the community will do more to create a new way of life than 100 mass meetings with 1,000 in attendance at each. So it's almost like in the part of the Book of Mormon where Alma was the preacher and he was the high priest and he was the judge and he stepped aside from the judgment and said that there's more power in the Word of God than there is in
Mass groups.
Yeah, mass groups. So that's what we're doing here in the Word of God in our faith family, and we're talking about faith, virtue, and patriotism right now, and we're going to empower moms. So okay, so this is No Place Like Home. Okay, we're going to watch the beginning of this. We've already watched the end, but watch.
Of a nation mold its citizens, develop its character, shape its destiny.
So you'll now know we watched this last time, this part.
Who left their immortal imprint on our nation's history were not fashioned on battlefields or in palaces, but in the cradle and at the fireside. Home is where liberty begins. We cannot expect to have a nation of patriots who love liberty and respect the Constitution if we are not raising these patriots in our homes. While others will try to convince us that the most important things we can do to save America and preserve liberty are outside our homes, we know it is what we do inside our home that has the greatest influence on our nation. The greatest act of patriotism a mother can ever perform will be within the walls of her own home. We don't need more government. We need more women of virtue, women of faith who will cultivate a foundation of faith in the hearts of her children, women of courage who will be ambassadors of truth, who will defend and protect the family at all costs. We need women infused with patriotism, who will teach and nurture principles of liberty and virtue our nation was founded on. Women who will foster a deep love and respect for our beloved America and all she stands for. We need an army of mothers who will raise a nation of patriots. That is how we will save our beloved America. By growing stronger citizens, citizens who cannot be oppressed, who are capable of facing tough challenges, citizens who are still in love with liberty, know its cost, and are willing to pay the price. America will stand, because America is bigger than a government. It is American families united in purpose, filled with the spirit of freedom. It is the spirit of the people that makes America free. The plane full of patriots that went down in a Pennsylvania field. The firefighters who walked into a crumbling building when everyone else was running out. The men and women sleeping in tents in 100-degree heat in Iraq and Afghanistan. It is the mothers teaching their children, the small business owners fighting for their dream. and the children who place their hands over their hearts to pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Liberty begins at home, and there's no place like home to restore hope in America. As mothers, we have a divine inherent right to protect, nurture, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our children. Hope for America is reflected in our vision of the future. You and I, we hold the keys. We are the keepers of the flame. We must do everything in our power to pass on that flame, make sure it burns bright, and that it continues to be a light on the hill and a beacon of hope to the world. We are the hope of America. We are the last line of defense between freedom and servitude. What we know and what we nurture in the hearts of our children will literally determine the fate of the free world. We can no longer stand on the sidelines. The future of America is in our hands. There is hope for America, and it is you.
So it is you. You're the hope of America.
Is there a place we can find that video?
Yes, and I can give you the slides, but it's on YouTube and it's all on Rumble. On Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so that's 8 a.m. our time. Go to the Mom View. They what they're doing is the View. The Moms for America has made. They just released
If
their
it's
third.
10 a.m., it's 12 here, not 8.
Oh, is that a.m.? Okay, I'm thinking in Puerto Rico.
You're thinking Puerto Rico.
Okay, so it's
Just
12.
the opposite.
12 p.m. noon on Mondays, you can watch the new episode of the Mom View, and you'll learn so many things from these women. The last episode was Catherine Engelbert with True the Vote and election integrity. And so if you join our social media stuff, you'll see little vignettes from that, or we'll remind you on Mondays to watch them. And then they put them, right now YouTube has been censoring them, so it's on Rumble. That's why I was telling you all those years ago, we need to go to Rumble, because they don't censor, because Rumble's part of True Social, part of Trump's things.
What is that called on YouTube?
If you look up just Moms for America, you'll see it. It's like Liberty Begins at Home, or Hope, Anchored in Hope. Those are two. So the Founders Formula. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Founders Formula, and this is the trailer of the Monument movie that you can watch with your kids, and it's 2 minutes.
There are those who would have us believe that the United States
You can enlarge it down in the corner. There's a little box.
Fearful, reduced to bickering with each other. I don't agree that our nation must resign itself to inevitable decline.
America is the richest, freest nation the world has ever seen. But as a father of 6, I look around and all signs tell me something is sick in the soul of our country. And history tells me that we're headed for disaster if we don't change our course now.
The set of ideas.
This is what's on the Capitol.
Implemented and advanced
She's freedom.
in this capital at this time.
We have liberty and freedom.
Is terribly frightening to people who are students of history.
If you look at the 70 superpowers in history, every single one of them has called themselves exceptional.
When you look at the Roman Empire, the parallels to what is going on in America are absolutely frightening.
And the question is, are we going to go the right path ourselves, or are we going to continue down the wrong path that so many nations have fallen into?
I went on a journey to retrace the footsteps of our forefathers to see if they left us some kind of a map that would guide us back to the foundation of America's success.
From the
When I think
Templars.
of pilgrims, I think of what I was taught in history class. I think of pilgrims coming over in these funny black and white suits with big hats and belt buckles on their shoes.
These are the people out of the box. These are the radicals of the day.
Can you imagine? Chained here, you're open to the elements.
You can read about places like this. You can smell the history.
You can't taste it.
Welcome to Mayflower 2.
So we have 102 people in this area.
Look at that.
Are you, Mayflower, 102 people, are you related?
What I discovered is that our history has not just been forgotten, it's been rewritten.
Yeah, this is where we want to all go on a Liberty trip together someday.
Everyone's perspective about what made America such a great nation.
Time is flying by too quickly, and our children's futures won't wait. We've got to do something now.
Why is this monument not being showcased more? It is
And the
illustrating
symbolism.
the principles of what this country is all about, and it's falling apart.
There is nothing in today's America that cannot be solved by a genuine going back to the American first principles.
That's good news. Very good news. I'm looking for good news.
This is the most important journey of my life. My family is worth fighting for, and so is yours.
Okay.
What was the name of that?
Monumental movie. And you can, there is on Telegram, I put a link on there where you can get Beneath Sheep's Clothing and rent that, and you can rent Monumental. If you buy the kit, you get the movie. Maybe one time we'll watch it here. Okay,
I did a
so.
thing going up to Boston and around and then to Monumental. I think it represented it here with all the symbolism
Yes.
of that monument.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, this is a quick, I'm going to go really fast with these because this is just the 4 ways we anchor, quick where we look, okay? So this is a symbolism of the 4 things, okay? We look to God, not government. That's why I put those on those wisdom, cottage meeting wisdom bites, as the source of our freedoms and our blessings. Freedom is a gift from God, not government. Our rights come from God. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We look to family. Families provide the foundational building blocks of any society. So we prioritize family time. A nation is a magnified, like a micro and macro, is a magnified home. All government originates in families, and if neglected there, it will hardly exist in society. The foundation of all free government and of all social order must be laid in families. That's by Noah Webster. If you want a really good book for the original dictionary by Noah Webster, it's 1828, and I would look at definitions of words there. And then we look to the Constitution. The Constitution protects our God-given rights. Defending the Constitution, Albert Einstein said, "The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in this defense are the constitutional rights secure." Abraham Lincoln said, "We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution." Look to moral and virtuous leaders. "Laws without morals are in vain," said Benjamin Franklin. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, and when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. We see that all throughout the Book of Mormon. So these 4 ways to stay anchored to hope is always look to God, not government, prioritize family time, study the Constitution from the viewpoint of the Founding Fathers, and do something. You're going to hear this at least 3 times in this presentation because it has to be in our hearts, okay? What home is, society will be. So we need to be mirrors. What home is, society will be. Home is the great conservator of good, the seating place of virtue. It is the origin of all civilization. The words uttered and doctrines taught around the fireside are the influences that shape the destinies of empires. It is the influence of home that live in the life of kingdoms, while parental counsel repeats itself in the voices of republics. We would impress upon the minds of our readers this grand truth, and would that we might thunder it into the ears of all mankind, that the nation is but a magnified home. C.E. Sargent, in the book Our Home. Herbert Hoover said, "If we could have but 1 generation of properly born, trained, educated, and healthy children, 1,000 problems of government would vanish." So the foundation of liberty. The foundation of liberty are the faith, virtue, and patriotism, these 3 prongs. Is created by our founding fathers. They have the pattern or the template that if you watch Monumental.
Those babies' hairs are outrageous.
They're
so cute.
My baby's hairs would never lay down. They always stuck up like that. I don't know why the way my baby's hairs were the exact same.
Oh.
So they were nurtured in the home as parents. They planted the seeds of faith, virtue, and patriotism, and these are the 3 pillars. So Eisenhower said, "Without God, there could be no American form of government, nor the American way of life. Recognition of the Supreme Being is first, the most basic expression of Americanism." Virtue. John Adams says, "Public virtue cannot exist in a nation without private virtue. The public virtue is the only foundation of the republics." We have to get it in the home. And then patriotism. George William Cuddiss says, "A man's country is not a certain area of land, mountains, rivers, woods, but it is a principle, and patriotism is loyal to that principle." So we're not just a country of wealth, a good soil, or government. It's a principle that lives in our heart. Okay? So those again, look to God, not government, prioritize family time, study the Constitution from the viewpoint of the Founding Fathers, and then do something. So, Winston Churchill said, "There is no doubt that it is around the family and the home that all the greatest virtues, the most dominating virtues of human society are created and strengthened in and maintained. So when Mama stays optimistic and confident, anchored in hope, she'll have a great stabilizing influence on her family and community. In this time of uncertainty and division, how do we stay anchored in hope? Remember these 4 things that we just talked about. And it keeps us looking upward instead of ruminating on all the problems. And when we look upward, God will put on our heart the solutions. So how do we combat all the false narratives? It was in Abraham Lincoln had triple ear docs, 2 Nephi 15, when he checked out the Book of Mormon for 8 months, which is Isaiah 5. So remember covenant and grace. And that's what the great chapter is, what's happening again today. And we think this is an informational war like World War III, but it was during Abraham Lincoln's time. It's the good is evil and evil is good. Fake is, fake and falsehoods, right? So if you want to read those, that's 2 Nephi 15 and Isaiah 5. So ask yourself why home is so important. Why are faith, virtue, and patriotism so important? And we know that if home is the center of society, then women are the center of the home. We need to be teaching and nurturing because what we teach becomes the future of America. So if we're seeing America deteriorate, most likely our homes are deteriorating, because that's what Satan, the lie that he keeps trying to do. There are destroyers of liberty, and we need to be we need to be building the futures of America. So that pattern is really important. That is the book that we're going to be talking about on the 4th Wednesday from 7:30 to 9:30, August 28th, this Raising a New Generation, and it's this garden allegory. And so the Garden of Liberty, they left us detailed notes. Our founding fathers left us detailed notes and advices. They knew what bugs would be in our garden and what diseases, and they knew how to prevent it and how to treat it before it caused too much damage. So in Ether 8, that's when it says awaken to your awful situation, and it literally says you need to be awakened to it and start combating those problems, find solutions, because if it gets above you, that's what Ether says. If these secret combinations get above you, then you're in trouble. And that's like what President Nelson told the women. If we don't speak out and have this perseverance and courage to speak out in a sin-sick world, the world will never recover. So we have to get above it, right? So we're going to learn how to do this by the foundation of the founding fathers before it gets too much damage. So in their write-up, they focused on soil preparation. They knew that the secret behind the miracle of America and our experiment had everything to do with the hearts and the character of the home and the citizens. So if we bring honest and true and upright into these principles, and that is the principle in number 2. The best way to ensure this republic, based on God's law, it survives is for us to remain morally strong and virtuous. Only a moral and religious people can maintain a republic, and that's a representative form of government. Frederick Douglass said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And this is why I wanted Jolene to teach this part, because she's so good about telling the story, so I had to write my notes, and you have to listen. Okay, so, all right. We are reminded, we need to be reminded first about simple things, and how if we persevere with these simple things and we do them, it's really hard to get your kids to do a family hymn meeting or devotional or to pray or to read scriptures. But if we focus on and we have the courage to persevere, even though those simple things might be hard, then and we anchor our children, then they can, and teach them that we can live under God with our free conscience and value this virtue, they'll come back to that in our home. So why try to spend all of our time to fix a broken the men in Washington, when we can exert our energies fixing our children, making strong children in our home? So he was born a slave, but he would go on to become a great reformer, an abolitionist, an orator, a writer, and a statesman. He was a lover of the Constitution. He said it was a pro-freedom document. That's what the Constitution was, and it was written to protect families. So where all men are created equal, all men are endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. And as a young slave child, he was taken from his mother and only had a few memories of her. And she lived miles away on another plantation, and she would walk half the night just to lay down by him and for a few hours, and then walk all the way back. And she would hug him, and she would call him, "You are my little Valentine. You're my little Valentine." So he never knew when his birthday was, but he remembered that it must have been Valentine, because she always called me, "You're my little Valentine." And he felt the love of a strong mother going through this hard time. so Frederick Douglass escaped from slavery as a young man, and then he would go on to become a national leader. President Lincoln wanted to free the slaves, but he thought it might be he should take all the slaves and put them over in the Caribbean on an island. But Frederick changed his mind because he realized that they are great, that it doesn't matter the color of your skin, they're great intelligence, they have the capacity to be like all mankind and be independent, contributing citizens. And so Lincoln was schooled, and he also read the Book of Mormon where it says black, white, bond, free, right? All men are endowed by God. And so this is my next slide. So this is Frederick Douglass's home in Washington, D.C., and it's in Anacostia. It's in Cedar Hills. It's high up in D.C. You could have, so on Moms for America, we have a section you can click on with Liberty Trips, and you can click on the state, and you can click on all these things that you can do in the summer with your kids, or if you're going to go on a vacation, and you can plan out your Liberty Trips. So he and his wife, Anna, she was a free black woman, and they had 5 children. And when she died, he remarried in his older years. And he said in his first marriage, it was the color, he married someone the color of his mother. In his second marriage, he married the color of his father, meaning a white man. And so Julian said that's really touching to her because it's always fun with the skin dynamic in her home with Angeline, right? And so yes, Frederick Douglass, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. But this will require time, sweat, and tears and commitment raising our children, right? But it will bring the dividends to help maintain this republic. And remember the story of a woman coming up to Benjamin Franklin and saying, what kind of government do we have on September 17th, 1787? And he said, a republic, ma'am, if you can keep it, right? So we have to return to the principles and values that made America the most freest, the most prosperous on this earth, and that light upon the hill. And so then, Ben Carson, if you have time, there is a link on Moms for America under this lesson. You can listen to this 27-minute. He spoke boldly, was lashed out against because there's Obama there. And,
Obama was mad.
Yeah, there were a lot of people. At the 7-minute mark, he talks about his mom and how his mom told him biblical principles and taught him virtues and values and what made America great and the most prosperous. And when they lashed out against him, they asked him, why would you give such a speech in front of Obama? And he said, I always pray before I give a speech, and I ask God to give me the right things to say and the things to say the truth. And so he just stood for his testimony. It's rare nowadays for people to speak the truth. Everybody just wants to get along, like Cox. Get along to go along, but you don't make peace with evil, okay? So, because if we just want to get along, in the meantime, the fabric of our nation is being destroyed. I found this speech inspiring and motivating and patriotic. And he was the head of pediatric surgery at the age of 33 at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and the first to separate conjoined twins at the back of the neck. And we know he ran for president in 2016, and he ultimately became the head of urban housing and development under President Trump. And he came from the impoverished projects of the inner city of Detroit. His name and his influence is felt on all the buildings in Detroit, and schools are named after him. His mom comes from one of 24 kids. She was married at age 13. And then when she had 2 boys and she found out he was a bigamist, then she divorced him and she raised those 2 kids on her own. She had a 3rd grade education. She couldn't read. And so she told her boys she didn't want them to be like him. And she prayed with them, read the Bible with them, had them read the Bible. She couldn't read. So she would take them to the Detroit library, have them check out 2 books a week, and she said you had to write a report to her before they could look out the window and see the basketball courts in their little project. And they're like, can't go unless you write your 2 book reports. And they would read, and she would get them, and she would make little marks, although she couldn't read them, and then she'd let them go play. Now, is that a persistent and courageous mama to make them break out of their cycle of poverty? And that's when Ben says, I learned to love to read. It brought me out of my poverty. It brought in my imagination. And I graduated. I went from a poor student to graduating at the top of this class. And there's a book called Gifted Hands. The true story. And then they made it into a movie. And then he wrote the America the Beautiful, which is rediscovering what made this nation great. And if you ever get a chance to hear him speak, he's so inspiring because he is courageous and he perseveres. And those are the 2 values and virtues we would like to give our children. And he learned these things from his mother, and she established patterns and habits that shaped his life and determined his destiny. So we need to tell our kids that their decisions that they make in their life determine their destiny. And the decisions as a mom or a grandma, what we do, if we don't act on a prompting, it's going to, ripple through our families. So The core unit which determines the strength of any society is the family. Therefore, the government should foster and protect its integrity. This principle, 26 out of the 28, Julene uses the most in all of her speeches. And that we need to really strengthen these families. That's why the Cottage Meeting Project is the most important. There's all these, there's so many liberty groups out there, but the only one that is really fostering cottage meetings is Moms for America, because we realize that we are the nurturers. We do hold the key. We are the keepers of the flame of the Republic. So how do we teach them that? Is we've got to look to the Bible. And James 1:25, okay, so I can remember. It talks about the perfect law of liberty. It means being doers of the work. So that's why do something. Okay, so how do we keep liberty? And there's so many scriptures on liberty in the Bible, and in the Book of Mormon, but we can't keep it unless we are doers, and we try to help be part of the solution. And then Galatians 5:13 is we're being called into liberty. We serve and we love one another. So in that 6 times in the Book of Mormon where it says land of liberty, it also says serve God. So if you're not serving God, we're not going to be in this land of liberty. That's why I do this out of the goodness of my heart, want to do this, and I'm not a paid position. All those years are no paid positions, because we want to protect America and we want to heal from the inside out. Okay, so Titus 2:4 teaches young women to be sober and to love their children. We have in Jacob, it says that the Nephites, the Lamanites the husbands love their wives, the wives love their husbands and their wives love their children. So we've got to strengthen that family. Leviticus 10:11 says, teach your children the statutes the Lord gave Moses, God's law, the natural law, which is the basic 10 commandments. And then Deuteronomy 11:19, teach your children in your houses, walk with them, teach them when they're lying down to bed or when they rise up. That's all those scriptures about praying with them and teaching them in their home. And so we have to promote it within our home, and then it will go into our communities and in our nation. And there is, sir, what did you give us? A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. So she teaches her kids still, even though they gather together every August, they go to the beach. This is in Bethany, I think. And then Al gathered his kids together, and it was around at the same time as now when she taught this lesson about the Olympics. So they decided to open up Isaiah 51, and it read, so Isaiah 51, Al taught about the rock which we're hewn from, and discussed how we need to get back to our roots and remember who we are. We're a son and daughter of God. And so as he talked about that, he decided to bring up the Olympics. And he says the black athletes were actually facing real racism in the 30s and 40s and 60s. And this man is Jesse Owens, and he was in the Berlin, Germany Olympics, and someone stole his shoes. And he had to use borrowed shoes to run. He won several gold medals. And when he was on the platform to receive his medal, Adolf Hitler left. He would not be part of that. And he experienced true racism. And then this next athlete, she's one of 20 children. She had braces on her legs till the age of 12, and she just persevered. She had courage to break out. And these are heroes that Al wanted his kids to see. And we need to teach our kids about heroes, even like the Captain Moroni. I know Jolene in her house has this giant Captain Moroni, and always taught about the heroism of Moroni. And it says in the scriptures, if every man was like the character of Captain Moroni, we would be all well. Everything would be well, right? So we have to teach those stories, these hero stories. So she's a hero, and she overcame her things, and she also won several events, and she proudly represented their nation to the world. And they stood and honored our flag and our Star-Spangled Banner. And then, so this is what he taught. He says, when we teach them strong stories of victories achieved and not just the atrocities that occurred, it will help deepen your children's reservoir to draw upon them when they have adversity or pressure in their life occurs. Instead of them thinking they're victims, they can become victors. Okay? And they can want to lift others as those who have gone before them. And that's what they did. They lifted others by their example. And so we need to look at these warriors and these heroes. If our children become happy warriors and patriots, it's because we've raised them right and we've taught them and they've nurtured them in the home. Same with if they understand the Constitution that our forefathers have given us, and they'll know these things, and it's because we taught them. And if they love America, it will be because we show them through our actions what faith, virtue, and patriotism look like. And so it's not what our government, it's not, we shouldn't look to our government or our rich soil or our wealth or we're, some nation like this. But if we cease to be good, then America will be ceased to good. And this experiment will fail, right? So we have to teach to be good. So the spirit of America is alive. This is Alex de Tocqueville. America is great. Alexis. America is great because she is good, and if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. So the spirit of America is alive, and we just need to help you we awaken, and this should be our personal quest, and there is no place for it to happen than in our homes, and liberty does begin in our homes. So we mothers hold those keys. We are the keeper of the flame. We must do everything in our power to pass this flame, to make sure that it burns bright and continues to be the light on the hill, the beacon of hope in the world. And so those are some questions. And then what Jolene does now that she has grown children is she writes a devotional every day, and she has her kids share pictures. And then, I'm already past time. I haven't got to my other stories, so we'll have to do those stories later. But what she does is she shares pictures, and she writes usually one quote from some hero, and then she uses a portion of a scripture that she's been reading, and then she writes a little testimony to her children, and then she shares what everybody's doing in the family. And I've been loving it. And what a great example that she's continuing. With my family, we were, during COVID especially, is we would do nightly, whether they were married or dating, they would join on and we would pray together and read the Book of Mormon together. And we did that through Google Hangouts. You can do that on WhatsApp or whatever, but she does it through text. And I thought that is the greatest thing because I can do that through Google Hangouts with my child on his mission.
What is that person's name, that lady?
This is Jolene Jackson, and that's Al Jackson, her husband.
They used to live in our ward here.
Yeah, so she is was a VP, and now she's the executive director over all the caucus meetings for all of our groups for Moms for America. And so she started here with Colette. She started with Robin in Oregon called Daughters of Liberty. Then came here with Colette and started Sisters of Liberty, and then joined with Kimberly and with Moms for America. Okay, so George Washington said, a primary object should be the education of our youth in the science of government. In a republic, what species of knowledge can be equally important, and what duty more pressing than communicating it to those who are to be the future guardians of liberties of the country? And where do we raise those future guardians? Isn't that cool that President Trump names the Space Force the Guardians of the Galaxy? So we are the guardians of our home. So in our micro to the macro, and we need to be raising those future guardians of the liberty of the country. And that's George Washington said that. So next time, I guess we will go over, I was going to talk about, and I could just show you, in this we were going to talk about the Star Spangled Banner. Maybe we can end, can I just do them singing Star Spangled Banner?
Who?
Just a YouTube, so you can see it. He had the courage, he had a story of courage because the whole there was a Dr. Beams who was captured during the Boston, started in 1813, and they were burning down all the buildings. They were capturing men and putting them in their army, and they wanted to take over America again. And Dr. Beams was helping the fallen British soldiers too, but then he was captured. And so his family and neighbors employed Francis Scott Key, because he was a lawyer, to go over and try to negotiate his release. And notice here this: the United States shall guarantee to every state in the Union a republican form of government. There is no time in our Declaration of Independence or our Constitution that says we are a democracy. We have a democracy, a representative form of government, and a constitution, and with our checks and balances. But the word democracy is not in our document. Republican form of government is in Article 4, Section 4. And then, so this is what I wanted to do this one lesson.
Change it over
Change
time.
the words.
So this is
none of our elected representatives, hardly anyone knows that it's not a democracy. It's a
So I like to say we're a constitutional republic. You can say a democratic constitutional republic, and now you've got everything all in there. Okay? So I'll just kind of end on the real story. Oh, this is 9 minutes. No, this is not. Okay, this is the story, but we won't do that. It was this one, if they'll let me do it. This was 3 minutes, yeah. Okay.
On September 12, 1814, British ships of war approached the port of Baltimore.
In the entire Royal Navy, there were 8 bomb ships. 5 of them were sitting there in the Patapsco River. These are the most powerful siege artillery afloat.
On board one of these British warships, an American, Francis Scott Key.
Talk about a witness to history. He finds himself in Baltimore Harbor just prior to this battle.
The concrete rocket's red glare lights up the skies over the harbor.
Okay, I don't think this one tells us. So why is he there? Is he's on an enemy boat negotiating that Dr. Bean's release, and so they said, we'll release him, but after this battle. We don't, you know our battle plans. You have to stay here and we'll see. You know, whether we'll release you or not. So now they're stuck on this boat during this 24-hour siege.
Harbor.
It was like a fireworks display. People who watched it were enthralled. They were terrified of the noise, absolutely terrified. But they saw a kind of beauty in it.
The heavy fire goes on and on. Aboard an enemy attack ship, Francis Scott Key hears the British plans for Baltimore and fears the worst.
He knows that the level of hatred that's directed at the city would probably mean death and destruction of the town.
The barrage from the water is constant, and with British infantry marching on the city's borders, Key knows Baltimore's fate looks grim.
He paced the deck of his ship in the darkness, hoping the explosions would continue, because if they didn't, he knew that the fort had capitulated.
The siege lasts all night. As dawn nears, there is a sudden silence.
Key was on board the ship wondering and asking himself what flag would be raised over the fort.
Can you imagine seeing that?
And he made out the stars and stripes flying above the fort.
The American experiment, the American nation, for that moment, was surviving.
Mary Pickersgill's masterpiece unfurls over the fort.
The largest flag ever made at the time.
Never before had he looked with such reverence upon the symbol of his country. Never before the flag had such a sheen to its glory.
It was the glory of victory. The wool catches the wind. The stars and stripes wave in the face of the enemy. The British are convinced the fort cannot be breached.
Miracle. A miracle from God.
Baltimore has been saved.
Okay.
But just think about what God did in all of that battle in order to inspire 200 years of love for this country in spite of everything.
And they started it in the home. And if they hadn't done those things, faith, family, and freedom, if they hadn't taught it in the home, hadn't read at the fireplaces in the home, and the moms, instilled these virtues, it would have not happened. And these men wouldn't have stood up. And we're just going to listen to the song.
Well, Francis Scott Key Bridge was the one that was taken down, too, by the boat.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. Recently, it was purposely taken out, Francis Scott Key Bridge. Yeah. Okay. So we should probably go like this, huh? We'll do this. We'll end this way. Here we go. Isn't it? I wanted to do all four because we're at that part again. We're really there. Yeah, betrayer within. And so hopefully it will empower moms, promote liberty, and raise patriots. And this is how we'll do it together as a group. So I love you all, and I'm glad that we can be together. And and if we want to talk later about how to do DCFS. Yeah. So we're officially done for recording, but if we want to answer your other two things, you can talk.
It was just that I think sometimes we forget that in the millennium there'll be a lot of really good people that are not members of the church.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
were talking about how he's a godly man.
Yes.
The guy, Kirk Cameron, right?
Yes.
And then you mentioned other people.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of godly
President
people.
Trump.
Yes.
he
There's
has,
a lot of people that.
People don't know who he is. He has a collection of Bibles, right?
They will be here in the millennium, and we will get to teach them, and that's why we're having temples, because all their temple work is going to need to be done.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is, you were talking about reels, and just recently in the podcast, True Millennial, yes. They've interviewed Elder Bednar, and he's talking about how to represent the church on social media, how to share your testimony on social media, and talking about that they really want us to do this, and they want us to do podcasts, they want us to talk about
how we will awaken.
Share testimony.
That's how we will get above the ether 8 that awaken to this awful situation before the secret combinations get above us. That the church has been led to have the missionaries start doing that in the 2020, and he wants each of us to start doing that. That's the only way we're going to get above. So if you want to learn how to make reels, I'm going to teach what I've been doing, and that will Katie she'll give an invite, and we're doing that training in September. But yeah, and so when you said that with the reels, okay, what else did I want to say with awakening? Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember. That's what it is. So Jolene's, big role with Monster America is these cottage meetings. She's had a vision and revelation herself with her and her daughter Kayla, to be able to promote cottage meetings. And what she would like to do is to be thinking if I can videotape you. Exactly what she just said about the church, but we want to videotape you and say, how has these cottage meetings changed your life? How has learning these principles, 28 principles, has changed your life? And we'll take a little Colette vignette and we'll make a reel and spread that. We'll make a Katie vignette and Robin, Marilyn, and I know Ariane. I was going to say I say it wrong. But we'll take little vignettes, and if you want to be part of that, we will have signups, and we're gonna start spreading this truth. That we've got to start to heal. And if it is true in one generation, we can heal this. And when we get President Trump back in and he does the correct history and he bans the incorrect stuff, and we put in 1776 project with the correct history, we're going to quickly turn this thing around, but we need the mamas. We have to get the mamas. And the Declaration of Independence celebration 2026, and then... Anyway, so be thinking that we're gonna start. We want to videotape you. You can write down your little vignette, your testimony, and we'll videotape you, and we'll make. I know, and we should be doing that for our testimonies about the church, and that's why I'm like, if we could find our own old discussions when we were missionaries, they gave us there's 6 principles for each of the 6 discussions, and they would remind us how to bear our testimony from each principle. We would have missionaries come back with burning testimonies. And right now we have missionaries come back, and I even asked my own sons, I'm like, so do you bear testimony of every principle of everything? And they're like, I remember my first mission, it was my second missionary, I finally asked him that. He's like, what? And he was out 8 months on his mission, and I'm like, and then he looked at the Preach My Gospel, and it's like one little section on a chapter, and I was like, that's why I want to go back to the original stuff and have, so that they're reminded to bear testimony, because they'll come back with testimonies, and they'll bear their testimony and touch hearts. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the reels.
Yeah.
You're talking about the principles. It's the 5,000-year leap.
Yeah.
The 28 principles.
It would be
good to do. Everybody do
a principle.
Pick a principle.
Exactly.
And then bear testimony why it's not equal things.
Yes.
Equal
So
opportunities.
wonderful. So if that's what you want your testimony to be, is one of those principles, and we can start with that project first,
fantastic.
And we can have 28 women from our group do that first, and then maybe next week when we're here we'll have a sign up. Then let's do that, because we're going to start. Say I want to bear testimony of principle 1, principle 2, principle 3, and then we do want to find women that want to bear testimony of just how, like for me, being here in Colette's home for all these years has changed my life, and it's changed my kid's life, and I am ever so grateful that she has opened her home and blessed her home and blessed all of our lives, and we are committed and connected as women. And at the time I was just moved back to Utah, and I just had no connections, and when Jolene invited me to come, you're my tribe. And I needed my tribe, and strengthened me.
They're so excited to find people that
Yeah.
like you.
So thank you, women. Yes, yes. And so getting it to put on YouTubes and Rumbles, and we should put things on Rumble just in case they go away.
Well, I would like to learn how to do that.
Okay, good. So it will be a Zoom
Could
class.
you just send out a list of the 28 principles? Otherwise, we're all gonna go grab our 5,000 year legal.
But if you laminate them,
yeah, then we can laminate them.
Yeah.
But that's how Julene just carries them in all her books. They're her bookmarks, and she
I have a
memorizes
bunch.
them while she's in the car because she knows being in DC, she's gonna. Then there is some training. So one of our lessons, I'll teach some training to do. That's what Bednar and the millennials. We have to train our youth how to be able to be confident in front of a little camera. So I'll never forget going to my first training in Sarasota, Florida, and then they're putting a camera in front of me, and I'm supposed to talk to America. I'm like, what? I know these principles, but I didn't know how to get, and so we have to practice. And we have to be courageous to be in front of a camera, but it is our time. If we don't, the world will never recover. That's scary. But it's a time of miracles. So let's believe that this can happen. And let's believe with, also Phil Lyman is doing a write-in campaign. I don't know if Trent Staggs is, but I would write him in anyway. And Chris Kimball for the states. They should be on the ballot. So pray that going to our federal Supreme Court will happen, and also pray that we can get Tucker.
well, Natalie took it to the courts.
Yes.
Do we know at what?
Yes, so it's been rejected. It's been
It was rejected
Yeah,
at the
so
court?
65 days. We don't quite have. So if Trent Staggs signs it, but it's like $4 million to run a sign-in campaign, right? And so Trent Staggs is going to be there at September 7th. But what we need to really do is get the word out. So if you have social media, and I've been off social media since 2014 because they banned me
But you're finally back
on
on.
Facebook. Well, no, it banned me. Yes, I can't post anything. So I find myself, ever since I fought against Senator King, who's running for the Democrat governor, and I fought against comprehensive sex ed, I get banned. But then I finally made myself again, and then I tried to, and it already said that I can't post. I got banned already. So, yeah.
Question kind of concerning what Angela was
Yeah.
talking about. What is the best way to find what our rights are for our children?
Oh, good.
Through
So
school, through medical. I mean, is
your best rights is just know. We are our Constitution protects us. That's why those 4 things: look to God, not government.
I mean, like individually, like don't fill out surveys. I mean, that's
Oh,
stuff I never knew.
yes.
How do we find out that?
So
for ourselves?
there is a lady that I follow on Instagram, and I put him. So when Katie and I are she's trying to do all her Instagrams, and then I'll give her my vignettes to put on Facebook, and we do a scripture a day too. But when I find somebody that makes a little reel that's really good about educating, there's a woman in California that does it really engagingly and simple and easy, then we'll share it on Instagram. So if you follow Utah.
Who is that gal?
Well, her name is, okay, so what we'll do is we've learned now, we've had to learn how, our old folks, how to learn how to forward on Instagram to the group, and then it puts it on a little folder, so you can watch all my folders and Katie's folders under Utah Moms with the number 4 America, or Utah.
It'd be awesome, Tami,
Moms,
if you
yeah.
would take a moment and just say,
I have to teach how to do that.
this is our, this is
It's
the
on here again?
Constitution. The Utah Constitution says, parental rights, that means don't sign up for service, that means don't give medical information, that means don't.
Is that something you can do and send it to me and I can send it to everybody?
Yeah.
Never leave your child in any.
Okay, so I knew these principles, but one instance that I thought I'd train my kids. You have to train your kids. It's not enough for mom to know. You have to train your husband and train your kids. So one instance was Lone Peak has this fight night, and they still do this crazy stuff. And they challenge kids to fight off property, and they go and watch these fights. They still do them. So my kid is a peacemaker, my Ethan, but his patriarchal blessing actually said that he would help his group of friends, right? And anyway. So this kid gets beaten bloody. He needs to go to the hospital. So he takes him to the hospital.
Your son did?
And I didn't even know about these fight nights. He never told me about these fight nights. So then he's questioned the next day at school, at Lone Peak High School. And they bring him into the principal's office, and he's answering questions with the police. Do you think that you should allow that to happen? Never. So Felice's daughter was in trouble too, or Felice was in trouble because of the same thing. So one thing,
Made a comment
yeah.
like, oh yeah, my mom abuses me, which she doesn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing to it. She was just being.
So that's why they put these counselors are not counselors anymore. They used to be school counselors under Obama's administration with the money that they got in 2008. I took screenshots of every single page on the White House of Obama, so I knew what his evil plan is. That's part of finding. So when we're Captain Moroni, last Sunday when they talked about all the war chapters and everything, they did not talk about Moroni being the person who has to strategize. Okay, the left are great strategizers. The right, we have to be strategizers. We have to go and try to.
George Washington had spies.
Yeah,
That's-
we have to be
you
great
know,
strategizers.
That's why they make good communists. You have to know how they think.
Yes,
what they're doing.
you have to understand, and then you have to really educate, and then really impress. But then they'll have their freedom. So my son at Real Salt Lake, even though he knew, if anybody comes to the school and ever pulls you out and questions you, you say, I know my rights. I'll never talk to you unless you're with my mom or my dad. My son knew that, Ben. But that day that I was just had it with COVID, he had already gotten COVID. I had walked in. He was turning blue. His coach got a tumor on his pituitary, and I took my little lanyard and I gave it to the principal and I said, put this, just like I did with my daughters, and and I said, put this in his, he will never test again. Even though now Herbert with his scary 11/11 and ruined my sacred date of when the Mayflowers landed, and he had that emergency broadcasting with that evil look, and he said, it will be $10,000 fine if you don't, even private schools, any businesses, you have to wear a mask, and you have to test 90 days, you don't have any immunity. And my son had immunity. Well, I had blood work, he had immunity, right? But they were forcing my son to start weekly tests again. And when I walked over to that school, I said, I want to look at your COVID test. They gave me, luckily the principal did give me a stick from the kids, the after school kids, the kids that are, remember, they targeted all the kids that had any desire to do anything extra, the go-getters. So they targeted the student council, the clubs after school, and then they targeted the athletes. Okay, so he gave me both of them. One was called Mirror Clean, one was called Eye Clean. They both were from Shanghai. Cox and Herbert bought them from Shanghai, China. They both, when I went to the website, they were little flocked nylons. And when you touch them, they showed on one of them in a petri dish, and it spread. They just shooted those little microfibers everywhere. And it said on the little package, flocked with ethylene oxide. So then I look up ethylene oxide. It causes sterility and leukemia. So my kid, who has 2 MTHFR genes, has a hard time detoxing. His liver only functions about 20%. Unless he takes methylated B vitamins, then he's fine. This kid was, having problems. He was turning blue. So when I went over and gave him my lanyard,
testing his nose.
Yep, all jabbing up there, and why does that one guy have a tumor too? We're having the little nylon flocks. If you went to Dr. Farley Jones up the street, her COVID tests were in a little cotton swab. That's it. So when I went to Egypt, I brought I bought 100 of them. Give them around. If you're gonna, and so I went over and I said, you cannot test my kid with that flock thing. You have to do it with a natural 100% organic cotton swab. And do it instead of their evil plan.
Think of how evil.
The evil plans that happened here in Utah. So what happened with this, my DCFS experience, again, twice in Utah already. So when you're over the target, you get over the target, is that I went in and gave him my lanyard and said he will not be testing again. We're using our religious rights. And I thought that was the end of it. So then I pull into my house, and there's a guy with Operation Underground, and I'm thinking he's a good guy, right? And he has a little lanyard, and I rolled out my window because I'm not out of my car yet, and he says, I'm here to talk about your son that I just recently interviewed. And I was like, oh no. And so then my son was disobedient teenager, didn't listen to mommy's talks and all my scary, and had talked to the guy, talked to DCFS. And he kept asking. No, the one law we do have in place in Utah is because we fought it with Utahns Against Common Core. Who's that guy? But anyway, with that law is that they have to record if they take your child, or record if they're interviewing you and then interviewing your husband and then interviewing this child over here. They would come in and they can interview every single child. They have to record it because you got to see if they're leading. So I wanted to get a hold of the recording.
They lose that recording too.
I know. So I wanted to get a hold of the recording because my son kept saying, so your mom must be abusive. She must abuse you, and so what did I do? As he's saying, I just interviewed your son, I said, well, I'm sorry. I know my rights. I never have to speak with you. Bye. Rolled it back up, and that was it. He kept trying to call, kept trying to text, and, he would call my husband, and we're like, I'm sorry, I know my rights. I don't have to talk to you. That's what I did in the hospital room. I know my rights. I don't have to talk with you. Get out of my room. I'm going to call the police if you're on my property. Get off my property. I own this property. I'm exerting my rights. Do you have to be courageous? sure in the heck do, but you have to know your rights, right? And what I probably should have done with my kids is role play it. You guys, role playing is so important to get it in their bodies. And some kids learn tactily. I should have probably role played my kids, like with the Virtues Project when they were little. I would teach my kids 52 virtues. It's like family meeting lessons. They had a little role play. I should have role played it with this kid because he was like, well, my mom told me not to talk to him, but then he's like, I felt guilty. I felt like I had to because he's an authority figure. Instead of, let's role play if someone comes to the school and takes you out. Or let's say you have to go to the principal's office and talk with the police. I should have role played that, Or this is another. Yeah, well, right now under Obamacare, if your kid goes to the hospital, they don't care if you've been in an accident or you've gotten shot or whatever. The first thing they ask you is, are you up to date on your vaccines? That's the first thing they do because they're going to jab you with the poison. And so luckily, my second boy, he faints in Spanish class, and he was doing some supplement drinking, not enough water. And I meet him at and he's my kid that will never lie. Never lie. Never, ever, ever lie. And so, when I taught him about vaccines, I said, if someone says, so this was my teaching my kids, if someone asks you, are you up to date? You say, yes, I'm up to date. And in your head, you're like, according to my personal beliefs. Because that's my belief. I'm up to date. And guess what chapter talks about herbs for diseases? Same chapter is titled Liberty, people. Alma 46, 4 + 6, 10. The very end, it says God's provided the herbs to fight diseases. God's provided the solutions for diseases. We don't need big pharma. Okay, so anyway, so luckily, because I was like, this kid is my more scared kid. Will he stand up, And when I got to the hospital, he's like, Mom, they asked me right away, are you up to date? And I proudly said, yes, I'm up to date. So I'm like, oh, good, because you can have it, but you have to train those kiddos. And if those kiddos don't do it, you're in trouble. So anyway, back with the story with my son, now I'm in trouble and I'm being investigated. They tried to go to the coach. Well, the coach just had his horrific experience in Hawaii, letting them in the home and all the thousands of dollars, like she's saying, and trying to get, backtrack. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I know this mom. And my husband kept saying, no, I won't. And the coach says, no, you can't. And you can't speak to him. And from then, and then finally they dropped the case on me. But I couldn't say a thing. And I just had to pray. And you just be strong. Nope. I know my rights. You can't talk to me. Get off my property. Get out of my whatever. You cannot talk to my child. And then your child, you have to teach your child to be brave. So, yeah, you do have to know your rights. And we do need to be doing more training on that with parental rights.
So that
also,
would be great in the Utah Constitution on parental rights, that it's there, and then testing. I mean, it would take one.
So that's why the Lord told me this year. So I gave the gender confusion back last time with Empowered Families Coalition. This time I volunteered for parental rights. Oh, that's why.
Do it for
you guys. You
do it for us.
There we go. Okay, so that will be our plan to know what to do. To make really simple vignettes and reels that can be shared. Because when I started making my reels, you just say no. And it's that whole just say no campaign with the moms and the kids. Because you guys, this will get scary, and you've got to tell your kids. We have to role play watching. If they're in public schools and their surveys, and the surveys also lead them to mental breakdown. They'll say, they'll talk about sex, and they'll talk about depression. They'll talk about suicide. You have a 6-year-old doing have you ever thought about committing suicide? And they're like, what suicide, right? Or if you haven't talked about some like masturbation, they can ask, well, what's masturbation? Well, then they Google masturbation. Do they have a right to ask that on a survey? Mom's supposed to be teaching these things, right? And even in church, do you know now we have the right when they interview our kids to be in with our kids, right? And before we had that right, I was always in there with my boys because I'm not going to let some church leader interview my kids and say something that I hadn't educated on yet. And so I was always there like, really? And I'm like, yeah, I'm the mom. I get to be there. So I was always in there before the church decided to let parents be in there.
Well, in Oregon, just going in for a medical checkup, they started, are there guns in your home? Yes. Use in your home. And a little child is,
So I'm glad you brought that up because that's part of Obamacare was to do those, and then they also will do that with registration with schools. They want the doctors. They want to know if you've got guns. They want to, and then they'll tag you as a extremist, right? And then also, okay, what was the other thing that when you said that? So, guns. Oh, when I moved to California, I had my kids were in karate, and this woman asked just 5 doors up the street, wanted my kids to come over and play, and the Spirit told me I needed to ask her questions. So just like that, you do need to ask questions, and now you do. And I out of my mouth came, "Do you own a gun?" And she's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Is it locked?" She said, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, good." And then the Spirit told me to say, "Do you have pornography in your home?" And I've never asked questions like that in California. I have my 4 boys in California. And I'm like, I can't believe that came out of my mouth. And she's like, "Yes, of course. I buy it for my husband and I." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. So then they're going to have to play at my house. We can play at my house." But wasn't it strange that the Spirit asked me? And then when we moved here, Lena was playing with this little girl, and I just love this family. But she asked me, and I had never been asked that question. She's like, "Are your boys going to be home?" And if she was going to come over and play. And I'm like, "What? Why are you asking that?" She goes, "Because I would rather they play at my house if your boys are there. I'm just going to be safe." You know? And I was like, "Whoa, that was good." And then she also asked, "So when I have a pool, you know," and she's like, "Will you always be in the backyard when they're in the backyard? You know, even if it's locked and gated?" And I'm like, "Yes, I will never, ever." Because I saw the drownings when I lived in California. But we have to ask, if we ask God every morning, how can I be of service? And what am I supposed to do today? And how am I supposed to teach my grandchildren or children? So that was that little thing that Julene got an answer to for her kids, was to bear testimony through a daily devotional through text like that. And
Well, they had it in their home until the kids all started
Yes.
branching out.
But then
every morning they
yes.
did devotional.
And she still does, and she teaches a principle of liberty, and she gets
Marie's
it.
still at home.
Yeah, Marie's still at home.
Yeah.
She still does. But for when her kids started leaving the house, then she hadn't done really anything with those that had left the house, and then she was praying on it, and she's like, "Oh, I can still do my little devotional through text."
And even as her kids, right? I mean, she's had a couple of them thinking that they're.
Well, they went to the U. I have
wandering.
one kid still have
And
some
then they see the
issues from the U.
situation of friends that are also wandering, and slowly they have come back to faith.
Yep.
And strength.
And they come back to faith.
That's your hope, right?
So that's everyday bearing testimony.
Can I read something
Yes.
just in honor
Yes.
of my mom to
Yes.
tie this in? Something that came to mind.
No, go right here.
No,
Stand
it's okay. She wrote this play called Patriots and Petticoats that we did, and I won't go into a lot of that, but we can probably do something
When
on
you
that
teach
sometime.
next week.
Yeah, I'm
that's
doing
this
something
is a whole different thing.
But just talking about what the women did back then and the founding mothers and the Patriots and Petticoats, they literally were teenagers and young mothers, and then there was the Abigail Adams, and you know, in AP classes.
There's a book, we're going
even-
to actually read Patriots and Petticoats, but then when we do that, then you need to teach that class.
Yeah, it's really good. It was music and everything. But this is what came to mind. During the American Revolution, the British officer told Lord Cornwallis, the British general, that he believed if he had destroyed all the men in North America, we should have enough to do to conquer the women. Some women fought the revolution with the power of their pens. Many others actually took arms and fought with muskets and manned cannons and actually got shot through their skirts, but they were preserved as well in some of the stories that we did. Others were spies and couriers like Paul Revere, carrying military information to American troops, but they dreamed the impossible dream of freedom and independence and were willing to lay their lives on the line to make the dream come true. Patriots and Petticoats is in honor of our founding mothers who raised a nation. Anyway, my mom's almost 96. She wrote this when she was in her 80s and playing Abigail Adams and too blind to find the stairs, and yet she still did it when we did Colonial Days. And I just wanted to say that in honor of her because she's waning, and it's hard to let go of some of that, but the honor to be able to take care of her. And so.
And does she still
Thank
sell
you.
it?
Well, I have the whole script and everything, and we performed it. Yeah, for the Constitution Days, we did it.
Because there's a mom named Shelley Schneider her group is called Iron County Moms and Daughters. And from this Patriots and Petticoats book, she's making, using Canva, little Patriots and Petticoat cards, kind of like if you go to a desert book and write and find cards about Moroni, and it talks about Moroni or Elna or Abinadi, you know, but do little cards that do vignettes with the woman, the Patriot in Petticoats, And so we can learn them. So if we have these cards, then when we're in the car taking our grandchildren, or we're picking up our kids, or we're taking them to whatever lesson, we can tell the story. We tell the story. But that's how we fight back.
You know, I was going to ask about that because I was doing this as my kids were like finishing middle school to high school, right? And so now they're through college. Now I have the grandkids coming, and they love little stories. And I had that flood in my house, so I don't have access to a lot of my books. So if I want to go get one book with the little stories, the one page, which one do you think is best? Is it
for the kids?
Yeah, for the little ones.
I usually have my manual, but see, anyway, I have. No,
No,
I'll give you them. So there are so many good little. That's why that manual is $15 on digital, or $43. She's got all these books that grandmas will want, right?
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah. But there's all these and these are the movies that you want to watch with your grandkids, and when
Is that Grandma Grizzly or on?
it's in the books, but if you join Grandma Grizzly, you can ask. Those grandmas are up to date on what they're doing.
Just the moms from
But
there.
when my mom had a room because she was at elementary school. She got paid to be in elementary, in classes, and so she had things when grandkids came over for the grandkids, right? And my mother-in-law didn't have anything, and she had raised 8 kids. Kimberly has 8 kids too, Kimberly Fletcher. But so she didn't have anything. So I decided, and she didn't really. When I talked to her, she didn't really want a lot of things, and so I just got a tub, and I put in for my boys. It was balls, Matchbox cars, and then I put books, right? And so. She could, when my kids came over, they wouldn't want to come to Grandma Hirsch's house because Grandma had nothing, right? She didn't have anything to do with them or read with them. She got rid of everything. And when I asked her, she's like, because I'm tired. I'm tired of bending over and picking up all those things all those years for all those kids. I don't want to do that, right? But I'm like, but then my kids don't want to visit your house. They want to go to my mom's house because she has tons of stuff and she'll read stories with them. So I do encourage you to have, and she would put it in her coat closet. Just pull it out and, so a few toys and books.
I bought them all, but I don't have them now.
Yeah.
I hate to change the subject just for a minute, but I have to go.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned about Phil Lyman. And you.
We're fasting every Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But he can't advertise. They don't have money to advertise to do a writing. Is that what I'm understanding?
Well, and it takes about $4 million. So there is Natalie has just texted out to help. Hopefully, people will help donate so that we can get the word out more. We're also Trent Staggs did all these interviews with War Room and Real American News and OAN News.
Because I think a lot of people in Utah, obviously, if Lyman had all his votes and Trent. Mm-hmm. If they had them, if people knew, and I'm afraid that they will not get in if we don't get it out.
Yeah, so that's why you love coalitions. So that's why when we called, I think that's why Kimberly teamed up with Tucker because Tucker has a big following. We were having 10,000 seats in Utah. It was the first one sold out. 10,000 seats. It's not a little thing. So if we can get, which now. Natalie, she's a constitutional lawyer, running for the end of that. So she has written it up, what is to be shared with Tucker and what's to be shared with Bunbeck, and then she's going to give it to everyone else that she knows. And she has phone numbers of news agents, and the Patriot news stations, and she'll get it out. So, but it will be a huge miracle. But we need to say not just Lyman. We need to put Trent Staggs in because we cannot. And Chris Kimball needs to be on the school board. She deserves it. She won a caucus, and so she's our sister. So we need to pray for all 3 of their names to be out there and to be on that general ballot, and then we get it over to God with the.
If they mail them to us, how do we write it in if it's mailed to us?
That's a good question. I'm going to ask I'm on an election integrity team. That's a good question because you don't. Trump is trying to say now. Don't just go same day. You can mail it in, but remember, you don't want to mail it in. You want to drop it off at a reputable place. But if you go same day, you can write it in. I think you can do the same thing. You can just write it in because 65 days before the election, and I don't know if Trent has signed it yet, but Chris Kimball has, and Lyman did the proper paperwork to be an official write-in candidate. Trent Staggs, I don't know.
Will be on the ballot as a.
No, we have to write it in. But the law is you could just say, hey, everybody write Trent Staggs in, and if he didn't apply 60 days before, and he could have the vote and actually win, but by law, he would win.
So
Because
they
he has
have
to fill out.
they
the
have to
paperwork.
apply.
You have to do everything according to the law.
Okay.
There's a risk. We do that. I'm
There is a risk.
afraid that the Democrat can get more votes than the votes are divided between Congress.
He's not, okay, so the reason why I've been bullied is because of the Democrat. Because because I took on King with comprehensive sex ed and got emails and phone threats, death threats, kidnapping threats. He is backed by Planned Parenthood. Now I'm courageous. So that's why perseverance today and courageous. We've got to be courageous. He's the same. If you don't understand who Cox is, and we had the UN here. We had Zelensky here. If you don't understand who he really works for.
If we split the vote, wouldn't King still be better than Cox?
I don't know if it'd be better because so far Cox is not for abortion. That's the only difference to me is abortion, right? Because Cox is doing the exact same things that King would do. So it's okay to have the risk. Why? Because of the stories of the founders at Foundation of America, the providence of God. If we don't risk by doing that write-in candidate, I mean, Trent needs to fill out his paperwork, then we're giving it away and we're not fighting and not allowing, God expects us, the number 40 means testing. That's why there's so many things with 40. God expects us, and then 400 years, 40 times 10. He expects us, our faith, to be tested. We're not converted until a trial of our faith. That's the definition of the Bible dictionary. So our faith has to be, to save this nation, we have to have faith.
What your question was?
If trying to concede in the election.
Yes, but doesn't,
Because Phil Lyman didn't, so it's good.
But even if Trent conceded, it was an illegal ballot because Trent won by 70%. The law, we have to go back to the law.
That's the caucus, but the primaries, he was in.
He wasn't supposed to be on the primary. That's what I'm trying to say. So Deidre did a fraudulent ballot. According to the law with Senate Bill 54, is if you won over 60% at the convention, at the caucus convention, then your name should not be at the primaries. They should not have been on there. Trent's name should not have been there in June. It should have been on November's ballot. He didn't know.
Oh, because he couldn't talk after.
But it doesn't matter if he didn't know. Deidre should know the law because she's lieutenant governor. So she is on her head that she did not keep the law and those ballots were printed fraudulently. So it's on Deidre's head. So Trent could still be on the ballot. Absolutely, he should still be on the ballot. This is our battle. Are we going to be courageous and persevere? Even if we have death threats? Are we willing, like she said, the Moses and Petticoats, are we willing to die for our country and to protect our kids? We have to ask ourselves that. Right? We do have to do it, so.